Are you interested in deepening your spiritual awareness and discovering your true nature as divine? Well, you're in the right place. Welcome to Align with the Divine. With me, your host, Patricia Diorio, spiritual mentor, sacred storyteller, and professional intuitive. Join me and my amazing guests each week for a deep dive into the exciting world of spirituality. Align with the Divine will inspire you to embrace your innate power to create your reality. It will motivate you to move past your limited thinking, release your subconscious programming, and show you how to live in the present moment with clarity and focus. Get involved with the show. Send your email to patricia@patriciadiorio.com. This is Align with the Divine. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to Align with the Divine. Patricia Diorio here. I'm particularly excited about today's show because we're going to discuss a topic that I've been interested in for a very long time, and that is the brain. The brain. How much do we really know about our brain? You know, when the whole conversation started coming out about neuroplasticity and that we can actually change our brain, build new neural pathways in the brain, to help us to expand our possibilities of how we can use the brain. And that as we age, even though the body ages, obviously, our brain doesn't have to age that way. Our brain can be vital and keep us going and keep us moving in the direction of expansion. So today, I have a wonderful guest. She is actually a friend and colleague. Her name is Donna Christine McGuire, but we call her DC McGuire. And she's a brilliant gal, a brilliant lady. She's a spiritually conscious scientist. I know that sounds a little bit like an oxymoron, but it's not. And I have worked with DC, gosh, many, many years ago. And now we've recently reconnected this year. And it's just wonderful to hear about her amazing work in helping people understand their brain. And before I give you her amazing vitae, I just want to remind you that I have this little quiz on my website, alignwiththedivine.net, where you can take this quiz. It's a spirituality assessment to see where you are. How committed are you to your spiritual work? Do you want to take it deeper? Do you want to start incorporating the work with our brains so that we can become even more conscious and aware that we're divine beings having a human experience? Well, please go to my website, take the little test, and I'm anxious to know what your score is. So if you'd like to share it with me and like to continue the conversation, I'm offering a free discovery session and a little mini tarot reading to see where you are, and perhaps might be interested in taking a deeper dive with me around your spiritual work. And so this lovely lady, DC McGuire, she's got quite the vitae. Gosh, I didn't even realize it, that she went to Wellesley College and MIT. I mean, you know, she's a pretty brilliant gal. She's had 30 years of work as a neuroscience researcher. And she's done public speaking and teaching and corporate consulting and individual brain coaching, which we're going to hear all about tonight. Would you like to have someone work with you to coach you on how you can really enhance the possibility of your brain, to really move your brain to a place where you be able to handle your trauma and your anxiety and your worry and your fear in such a way where you can actually change it? This is what we're going to talk about tonight, and it's so exciting. So neurochemistry, especially dopamine, brain scanning technology, and related techniques are the basis of her clinical practice, focused on rewiring the brain to release anxiety, stress, and trauma. And I think you're going to really enjoy this conversation about dopamine. We all know that dopamine is a neurochemical in the body. Everybody knows that for the most part. And we can't be without it. But I certainly didn't know that dopamine can serve us in a positive way, but it can also pull us down in a negative way. Pull us down, but by that I mean that we can get, from getting angry or upset or worried, we can get a rush of dopamine. Or from being joyful and happy and doing what we love, we get a rush of dopamine. Where would you like to put your attention? So we're going to talk about that and ways that we can really stimulate the brain to increase, to produce dopamine in a really positive way, the positive thinking. So her academic background includes graduate studies and clinical research in psychology and psychobiology at Wellesley College and MIT. Also, she worked with Bernie Siegel, who was a fellow I interviewed many, many years ago on my show, and he's an amazing doctor and healer. And she did the most wonderful experiments with him at Yale University, and she's going to share about those, I'm sure. She lives here in Santa Barbara, my neighbor, and she serves on the National Advisory Board of the Union of Concerned Scientists. She enjoys skiing, tennis, sailing, kayaking, and painting. She's a wonderful painter. And when you see her today in our wonderful interview, you'll see a painting that she did that's quite lovely for her background. So thank you for tuning in today, whether you're listening, driving your car, walking your dog, or cooking, as I like to say, or whether you might be watching us online on YouTube or on my website, alignwiththedivine.net. So thanks for watching, and we're going to have a wonderful conversation. Let us know. Give us some feedback. See you later. Well, hello, dear Donna Christine. Ever since I heard you speak a few months ago at Unity Spiritual Center, I knew that I had to have you on the show. And part of the reason is because I'm very interested in neuroscience, and it's happening today in society where people are getting interested in the brain, and they're finding out that the brain doesn't necessarily age like the body does. That we can actually, neuroplasticity of the brain tells us that we can change the brain. So I've been very fascinated with that. And I think it's a wonderful conversation to get out there for people of all ages. So why don't we begin with you sharing this thought that you never in a million years thought that you would be a neuroscience researcher. And here you
okay. Yeah, this should encourage anyone who might think, well, it's too late for me to make a change. Because I started out in a family of doctors. So, there was a lot of conversation going on about healing in the body and that kind of thing. But I decided to go a different direction. I was a flight attendant for a few years, and I worked in Washington, D.C. on the Hill for a senator. And then, isn't that lovely?
Katie's saying hello.
Oh, hello, sweet thing. And then I was in Connecticut at that time, and I had the good fortune to create this major commercial space planning and design firm. And it was so successful that I kept putting aside this little voice in the back of my head that said, I really want to be a doctor. I really want to be a healer. And I'd even throw it out once in a while to a friend, and they say, are you kidding? What life you live. I was driving my Porsche. I had a great house. I was traveling. It was all of the kind of satisfaction and kind of, accomplishments that materially looked very good. And yet I knew inside of me that it really wasn't what I had in mind, but I kept going, because you may find yourself too. You become successful, or you get letters behind your name, or whatever it is that people have known you as, or maybe family has supported you to become, and you can get stuck there. And it may not be in line with the evolution of your mind and soul. Right. So I'm there, living a pretty fancy life. And then all of a sudden I'm in a car accident, a really bad car accident.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. I haven't heard about this one yet. Tell me about it.
They don't talk about it much, but I realized it was such a turning point, because I went to the hospital and was kind of in and out of the hospital, mostly in, for about 4 months, and had some surgery and things. But the most unexpected thing was that at the end of the day, it was about in the second month, at the end of the day, the doctors would come in. There were 5 of them. Only one of them had been my surgeon. But they'd come in, they'd sit in the room, and we'd be talking about things that were not surgical. They were not allopathic medicine at all. They were about healing on a different level. And how I was able to talk about that was, beyond me. And I didn't even it was sort of an altered state or something, but we were just having a conversation. They'd come back and they'd ask questions. Well, by time I was, about to leave, they wanted me to go to medical school. I said, you got to, you got to be a doctor. And I thought, well, that makes good sense. So I tried that for a couple of years. And I went to see someone that maybe, you have heard of, and your viewers, listeners, Bernie Siegel, who wrote Love, Medicine, and Miracles.
Yes, I'm familiar with Bernie Siegel. I interviewed Bernie Siegel, believe it or not.
Oh,
When?
fabulous. Yeah. He's amazing because he was very bold. I went to do a training with him at Yale, and he would have us standing by the elevators in the med school there, by the elevators, and imagining that we were aligning with the elevator and whatever else was going on there, and that the elevator would open at our floor without ever pushing a button. And we were able to do it. Now, we really got quite a reputation. We were I'm sure, butt of a lot of jokes, but there we were, kind of like calmly just standing there, and someone would get off and they'd go, Bernie Siegel, right? But it worked, because we went into alignment with an elevator, which to me was remarkable, a demonstration of how it doesn't matter what it is, your car, your elevator, your brain,
Everything.
your body, everything.
Everything's energy vibrating at a frequency that determines its density, even an elevator.
That's right. It's exactly right, because the way molecules are become formed is they're a collection of molecules. So a molecule has has electrons and protons and all these things, but the way they're connected is energetically, vibration,
Right.
certain frequencies, which is why there isn't anything that we couldn't say that we could align with, because everything from your sofa, to your kitty, to the elevator has, because of the way it's joined together with certain kinds of molecules, they're connected by frequencies.
And I've studied about the difference between the Newtonian molecule, Newtonian atom, and the quantum atom. And the quantum atom is 99.999999% space, right? And 0.00001 or 0.00001% matter.
That's right.
Wave and particle. You could look at wave. It's mostly, the quantum atom is mostly wave with a skosh of particle. And if you looked at the particle under the proper magnification, it's also empty space. So here's this atom, right? And then in the traditional atom, of course, you have, all of the descriptions of the parts of the atom, the proton and all of that. It's very different from the quantum atom. Anyway, I thought I would mention that because it's exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, that was, and that was at the time when we were just starting to talk about, this was in the late 80s, where we were just starting to really talk about mind-body connection, that kind of thing, that there was anything else going on. And he, in fact, I'll tell you a story about what happened there. We had a group, we put out requests to doctors in the area, oncologists, who had patients for whom they felt they had no more treatment. So we had brought them together in a group, in a support group sort of thing. Again, making it up as we went, because there was no literature, nothing to work on.
Bernie Siegel.
At Yale. And we sent it out to 600 doctors. I remember, because I had sent the letters out. And they, we only ended up with about 17 people that were in the group, because there was no buy-in on what this hocus pocus could do. And I think if we weren't at Yale, nobody would have showed up. So they're in the group, and all we're doing is we're support in each other's experiences, but also we're reading funny books. We're reading Norman Cousins,
right?
and we're looking at funny films, and we're just having a good time and reading inspirational books, coming together once a week. Well, these patients just had a completely different track in terms of their healing as compared with the ones that normally with the prognosis you would have anticipated. Follow this up 10 years later, and almost every one of them is still alive. I mean, this is phenomenal, just phenomenal. So that was sort of the beginning of the proof. And so then I decided I had to do neuro research, neuroscience.
Oh, so that's how you got on, because that was my question.
Yeah, because it's like, wait a minute, whatever's going on, right now in med schools is okay for what you were talking about, Patricia, the classical physics, which is material. You can see them under a microscope, you can touch them, that kind of thing. But when you get to this other element of subatomic particles, which you can't see under a microscope, can't see them. Yeah, but they're the ones that are running the show, as far as I was concerned.
Deepak Chopra calls them the stuff of creation. Yeah, subatomic particles are the stuff of creation. So I just want to be clear, I want to backtrack here for a second. After you had the car accident, and it must have been pretty serious for you to be in the hospital for 4 months.
Yeah, it was.
I don't understand exactly what you were sharing when you said the doctors came together, because they were questioning you on what, your own.
Oh no, we were. That's a really good question, and I hope I can pull up enough really good information. But we were talking about. I remember one of the surgeons was a neurosurgeon, and he was a pediatric neurosurgeon, and he was talking about how it was to have most of your patients not make.
Most of your patients die, yeah,
and sooner or later, and what that was like, and then talking about how can this happen? What's going on? What about these lives that are so young, and where do they go? And how can this be when that this happens to this family, but not to that one? One lives and one dies. It became very philosophical. And then we went into expanding from there about wondering about what it is that how we can work with patients differently than just these mechanical kind of slice, dice, and burn is what they used to call it. And if we, this wasn't fairly primitive, so we would talk about what else could you do, and then that's where this kind of thinking about, well, the mind and body. It's like, what if we're all one unit? You can't separate one from the other.
What I'm not clear on, though, is how did they even begin that conversation with you? What did you say or do or show in an experience what they would even move in that direction away from telepathic into this whole idea of energy healing? Did you say something or do something?
I don't. Now that you mention, I know where it began. It began when I had surgeries, and I would tell them to please talk in very positive terms.
Oh, got it.
To speak to, even though, and now we know much more about the fact that our brains are very much aware of what's being said under anesthesia, and that I would say, I would really coach them ahead of time. It was not just like, don't say good things, or I was like, this is what I need you to do, and I had music that I wanted played, and it was very meditative music, very calming. And of course, the doctors and the nurses reports after that was that they loved the environment.
Yes. Wow.
It was good for them. And so then we talked about, well, do you think you did better work because your mind and your body were in a different place? And so I guess that's what it must have been. It just led to all kinds of questions.
Yeah, that was an important piece of the story, because that really opened up their mind to the possibility of, when you set the environment in surgery, especially given that the patient always hears what's going on, that it be the most positive, reinforcing, and if it's not, to not even move into the negative. Of course, the vibration.
Yeah, because that's going to put everybody else on alert. And we know that when we'll talk about this in a little bit, what happens when we're under stress and how it blocks our highest thinking, problem solving. So that motivated me to go to grad school, study psychobiology at Wellesley College and MIT, and then to come out here to California. First of all, I went to the at UCLA at the Neuropsychiatric Institute. But then I decided to come up here to Santa Barbara, and this is where I had a clinical practice working with terminally and chronically ill individuals. A lot of it was around the time of the AIDS epidemic, and speaking and teaching, doing like 3-day seminars, that kind of thing, and also Wellspring.
And Wellspring. I was a Landmark education girl, but Wellspring was happening at the same time as Landmark, I believe. Yes?
I don't know much about Landmark, so this was separate, completely separate. So I don't know. We were just fortunate enough to get you involved, and this time where this was a foundation that was started to serve individuals who were dealing with serious illness and who needed alternative opportunities to approach and contact and stimulate their own healing potential. So we offered classes in different kinds of methods of thinking, and it was an extension. And Patricia, I think maybe you remember it this way too. But at the time when AIDS was so overwhelming and we didn't have anything to offer anybody except who we were and these different, different techniques, because the medicine was not working. There's no surgery for it. And I felt like their gift, the sacrifice that hit that brick wall, was when we turned around and said, oh, wait a minute, there's got to be another way.
Yeah.
And this was really where I felt like medicine pivoted to start to take seriously integrative medicine. And so I thank all of our dear ones that we lost for their sacrifice, because that, if you look chronologically, that's when we started to open up to those kinds of things. And then
Wellspring, I'm sorry, I thought Wellspring was a program that you took. I didn't recall that it was the foundation that you worked with. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Well, I set the foundation up, and it was just designed to be able to offer for free, these classes and this assistance at some of the hospices and things like that, or the hospitals, to provide the services that were not being offered. And AIDS became such a it was such an epidemic, that we were even expanded the capacity of the hospitals, at least here in Santa Barbara, to include the patients being treated by chiropractors, by naturopaths, acupuncturists,
alternative healers. Yeah.
Alternative healers were allowed to come into the hospital.
Yeah.
And that was a real breakthrough.
That was a real breakthrough for sure. Yeah. So as a result of this, you discovered something really important that you're now lecturing about pretty soon.
Oh my gosh. 9/11. I mean,
when I heard you speak about it at that lecture, I went, oh, wow, this is really powerful.
Well, if you think back to 9/11, I think all of us in that moment had our bubble pierced, because we knew, there was all kinds of uprisings and horrible conflicts going around the world, but not in America. We might have had a few random shootings at that time, or the explosions in Oklahoma. But basically, it's not like it is today, where, another school shooting. Really? And then they go on with the rest of the news. So we were living in this space where you felt pretty safe. And I know in my bubble, I was working with people who were trying to cure cancer. A colleague had developed a tiny computer chip that could be implanted into the brain that would help an individual use the keyboard on the computer without any hands.
Wow.
Or voice, just their mind. And so, in my life, and I was teaching, I was speaking, and it was all about how to use this creative energy, how to just choose what you say, what you do, and just kind of, expect the best. And that I still believe in that. However, at that point of 9/11, the next day I was just on my knees, because I thought, wait a minute, how can humanity do this? How can that happen here or around the world forever? I mean, as long as you've read a history book, you see the indication of the brutality and inhumanity that we've experienced. And now we've got we've got what's going on in Ukraine, and we've got what's going on in Israel, and
Right.
and we've got so many things where people are turning against others or really causing huge harm and misery. So I just thought, I finished off my speaking contracts and all those things, and I just went just deep dive into finding out what's going on. Because first of all, looking at it in the months following, it looked like what needed to be explored was gender, was maybe religious traditions, socioeconomic features. It could be cultural. That looked, like pretty obvious where how we would explain this, but it didn't, because we could look at other things in other ways, and these might be features. These would be features, but it wasn't. There wasn't all of them, and it wasn't. Sometimes there was some of these and some of that, but it wasn't any way that you could say brutal, inhumane behavior, as in the World Trade Towers, was because of this. So that again, it was just like, well, okay, we got to figure out something's going on here, because if there's been this possibility for this behavior, there's something going on. So that's when, about 4 years later, I discovered dopamine. I mean, I didn't discover dopamine. I discovered it's been around for a long time. I discovered the linkage to behavior and this neurochemical. It's
Is that your initial research, or had research already been done?
Yeah, no, that was pretty much the first time that it was ever seen that way. It had been seen as a reward for some things, but it had never been seen as a reward for brutality, for harm, when the human beings do harm to one another. So looking at dopamine, it's always been essential for survival of humanity. So that made it more complex, because it wasn't like, oh yeah, get rid of the dopamine and we're going to be fine. No, we need it. It's our friend. We need that balance, because in for our earlier ancestors, they relied on the fact that the dopamine would reward them to come back again and again to procreate. That sex would be rewarding when you only live to the average age of 18. And then you would if you could get out and find some berries and some, I don't know, woolly mammoth blubber or whatever, and you could pack it on as much as you could, that's good. So you got rewards for the highest caloric values of, whatever the food was, you get more dopamine for it if it had more calories. And then there's getting out, and we got dopamine for going out and being curious and checking things out and exploring and taking risks, because we had to get out there to find new ways to survive. Somebody had to be very brave to keep walking to the edge of the earth, and dopamine gave them that reward, the fix, to go like, okay, well, I kind of scary, but wow, it feels good. And so that those things, and being willing to get into conflict, to defend off the marauding horde that was going to attack your tribe. So all those things at a certain time were just part of our development. Now our change, the change now, and the reason we need to really identify it is because it affects all of our emotions, our decision making. And that's personal, interpersonal. It's in our communities, in our country, and global. Dopamine is running the show. And fast forward to modern day, to where we are right now, you can get all of those 24/7 in as much and a larger quantity as you want. So procreation, well, porn is available constantly on our computers. Obesity, we have we can, convenience store, I'll give you all the Tostitos and Oreos you can imagine. Novelty, you can go on your devices and just scroll and surf and or change partners or whatever you want to do, but there's always a way for something new. Exchange, you can get some of these low-cost clothing, that you just keep putting into your wardrobe, and it's always there. And Fear, my gosh, you can play video games. High charge, you get more dopamine for that kind of anger and conflict than you do for any of these other activities. Because again, the brain thought it was the way it would help humanity survive, to be able to just make sure we can be triggered and instantly be in conflict, which is always based on fear. Mm-hmm. So all these things being available is a real challenge because, well, I mean, right now, 3% of all women in the United States and 11% of all men, think of those in millions, are addicted to porn.
What are the statistics again?
3% of women, 11% of men.
Wow. Almost 3 times men.
Yeah, and about 1% of our country, again, millions, what's 1% of our population, right, are addicted to gambling. That's the risk part, the part that we were rewarded to get out and explore. Now, gambling will do that for us. And obesity is really scary. 42% of all adults are obese.
42%?
That is based on the World Health Organization's definition.
42%?
42%, yes, in the United States. Yeah. And the definition is that it's enough overweight to put the individual at risk health-wise.
Health-wise, yeah. So let me just, can I just kind of recap here a little bit so we're following you? What you're saying is that originally, and when mankind was just beginning, so to speak, in the caveman days, dopamine was a big part of the ability to survive and to really make it, right?
Yes, exactly. And yeah.
Now we don't have those same threats, and instead it's used really in a more negative way, or the dopamine reinforces negative behavior.
Yeah, exactly. Because, well, I guess it's a good thing to talk right here about the addictive nature of dopamine.
Yeah.
The real purpose of dopamine was to reward people to move towards things, the repeat behaviors that will help them survive. And now we get them, and there's no limit on it. So what happens is that dopamine registers the same part of the brain, the ventral tegmental area, which is the same part of the brain as cocaine, amphetamines, alcohol, caffeine, all of those things. And so it, if you can get addicted to something you can buy at the convenience mart or something you can do on your computer with no one else involved, it's a risk, because if you think of, again, addiction, and I think we've all seen the model of the addict who is on alcohol or on heroin or opioids or something like that, and when they start to withdraw, they get angry, they feel bored, they ache, they feel physically and emotionally really bad. They can be depressed. We're the same way with dopamine. Now, this is a real challenge because think about what video games are like for kids.
Ah, that's terrible.
Think about, what it is that we have going on, that where we've got all these addicts. Oh, and the percentage of those that are considered to be addicts or addicted to digital devices is up around almost 50%.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That is really.
How does marijuana fit in that, given that it's legalized now and it seems to help so many people to manage their anxiety and their lives? I mean, I think
that's a really tricky one, because about 31% of those who use cannabis regularly, who are just smoking it, just taking it as cannabis, not their gummies or their in any other form, just that way. About 31% of them have what is called what is diagnosed as an addiction. And again, an addiction, the problem with addiction is any kind of addiction is going to interfere in some important way in your life. So it will. One of the things we know is that young brains that are on cannabis will lose motivation. They lose an ability to focus and to stay engaged. And the problem is that the brains of young people are developing up for women about 20, 22, men to about 25. So if they're using it before that time, they are influencing the wiring of their brain that's going to stay with them. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's a huge, and can it be addictive? Absolutely, it is addictive.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I've just done a lot of reading about it, and there are situations where it really helps people who are, I had one particular client that was bipolar, and her daughter was bipolar, and they say that bipolarity is inherit. You can inherit bipolar tendencies. But her daughter, who was young, found tremendous change and relief when she smoked. Instead of being on the drugs that the shrink was putting her on, she was smoking pot. And it really helped her to find her balance and to keep her focus and to be a much better, happier person than on the particular prescription drugs.
Well, you see, that's where it's directed and specifically targeted for certain by people who know about the brain and understand what the cannabinoids can do, and there's a lot of benefit from them. There's no doubt that we're going to find even more uses for it.
Yeah.
So that is definitely, but that's given also in quantities and in such a way that it not be addictive. So I mean that's the bottom line. There's nothing inherently wrong with it. It's just that the age at which it's used, and then unless there's a reason, and then what they're doing is they're augmenting something that needs to be enhanced or changed or something, and it's very specifically targeted. There's just no problem with that.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I think there's a lot of good to be done.
So
it needs to be guided.
Yes. Well, now with entheogenic drugs that are coming to the fore, LSD and psilocybin and others as well. They're using MDMA, ecstasy. They're using it in a professional capacity now. Scientists, not scientists, but psychotherapists are using it in to help people to really manage their lives with micro doses during the day, and there's a lot going on around that.
Well, I think that's very exciting and good. I'm not going to tell you about my Friday afternoons at MIT when we kind of bring whatever we put together and share it. Pretend I never told you.
Really?
Yeah, and I guess I'm okay. But I'm not recommending that at all. However, I think that this dovetails very nicely with our expansion of and our sense of ourselves as larger. So that back in that time, which was in the early 80s, it was just crazy. Like, look what we can experience, or look what we can do. Now what I see going on is that it's taking a challenge, a problem, and it's opening up different possibilities, because the brain, then we know, can on its own, given the right components and the right conditions, can figure out a lot of things about positively rewiring itself. I mean, I think of this wonderful example that we first heard about a while back, but now we're hearing more and more, is that a young girl was taken to the hospital and had seizures. They went in and they did an MRI. One half of her brain was missing. One hemisphere was not there. Now, this girl was a normal student. She jumped rope. She did everything kids do. And she was having these seizures, so something wasn't, quite working right. But her intellect, her motor capacity, all those things were fine. And there she was with missing a hemisphere, an entire, it's dark. I saw the scan.
Amazing.
And there's been several since then. And the message there is what the brain can do, how it can rewire. Now, obviously, the younger you are, the better that goes. However, it speaks to the capacity of a certain wisdom that transcends just what we know about the systems and how we think they all work. There's a larger wisdom going on in there, and just because we can't measure it or know about it yet doesn't mean it's not there. And I work, a lot of my work's been with FMRIs, to see in real time when people see something or experience it.
What is it? FMRIs? Would you?
It's a functional MRI.
Functional. Okay.
Yeah. So the scan is going on in real time. It's not, when you get it out, it's not like an X-ray or even a CAT scan. You watch
you see it,
the various parts of the brain operating. Anyway, so we just know there's a lot more capacity. I just wonder, would you like to have an experience of dopamine right now and see how it happens in 1/100th of a second?
Sure, let's do it.
Okay, because this is so important to know, is that it's always happening in a little bit or a lot. Anytime there's an emotional response, and as Jung said, that anytime there's any response, it's always emotional. Is that your dopamine levels will change a little or a lot. So I want to invite you right now to close your eyes if you're comfortable with that or not. And I want you to go out to your mailbox or go to the post office or whatever you do when you're sorting through that mail and you're tossing out the catalogs. And there's a letter with some magic letters on it. IRS. Is it, anyone have sweaty palms?
A shot of dopamine.
We could carry on about this, but we know what we're talking about. Your heart rate changed, your breathing changed, and your dopamine levels skyrocketed in that instant. Okay, one more. Try one more.
And that was coming from fear.
Oh, yeah.
Because
remember, that's the most powerful one, because that's the brain's top warning signal to watch out. Something's not,
something's not right. Yeah.
Okay. So, okay. How about you're driving and all of a sudden up at your rear end, you're thinking, well, oh, whoops, you see lights and a siren. And maybe you hear because I've heard this is how it happens. You hear, on the loudspeaker, and it's saying, pull over, pull over. Okay, you pull over, and the policeman walks up there and says, ma'am, show me your license and your insurance card. How do you feel? Can you think of anything else?
Awful.
Yeah, you don't care, like, because then the next thing you do is my hands are sweating when I'm just talking about it. Not that that's ever happened to me, of course.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's happened to me, and I get right away. I mean, that's a great way to explain a shot of dopamine happening.
That is dopamine. And the reason it happens instantaneously is it doesn't give your brain a chance, like my brain would go on, with math and things that I enjoy, is it's not going to let you take the time to say, if I'm measuring in my mind the vector of that car coming at me at that speed and that angle, no, the brain just makes you go, whoa, all the way over. It's not going to give you that time to interject any kind of cognition to it.
Right.
So it's always there. So, go ahead. You had a question?
Well, so obviously, I mean, we know clearly with these examples that we get that shot of a dopamine, and it's those examples really, of course, are all based on fear triggering the dopamine. Give us an example of using dopamine in the positive direction, in an expansion direction, because I really would love to tie this conversation right into this idea of expanding our understanding of who we are as spiritual beings having a human experience, align with the divine. And how do we, I mean, the divine is consciousness. It's here, you know, it's everywhere, it's everything. There's nothing that's not consciousness or energy. How can we really employ dopamine to move us in the direction of excitement about this possibility of being energy beings in physical form?
Oh, absolutely. I'm so excited to share that because it's such good news. But before I go, may I just give you one more story?
Yes,
That
of course, of course.
because I want to emphasize the profound effect dopamine has on our behavior, on our choices that we make. And I think it will emphasize how important it is to recognize what those signs are, and then, as you're describing it, how to proactively use it for benefit of everyone. So I'll just share a quick story with you that I think is pretty profound. There was a man who was a pillar of the community. Brilliant mind and really active in all the nonprofits, and president of the California Bankers Association. And and he went to a meeting, and he was going to be, you know, I'm sure he's the president of the board wherever he was, and he was a little late, and he got into you can driving into the parking lot, and it was full except for one spot. So he's ready to just pull, and he's just about to pull in, and this big pickup truck, you know, with tires about the size of the person inside, pulled into it. And the guy just got out, and Mike said, I slammed on the brakes, and I was getting out of my car, and he just went into the building, and he never even acknowledged me. He never looked at me, anything. And I just about yelled at him, and I thought, I'm just gonna, you know, what am I gonna do? And he said, all of a sudden, I thought, what am I gonna do? Deck the guy? I'm like, you know, am I going to have an altercation right here? I mean, he's in his suit and white shirt and tie, of course. And he was just really shaky. He said, I sat down in the car, and this is leading into what we'll be doing too. I sat down in my car, and I took some deep breaths. And what the heck just happened here? Because it's so contrary to who he was as a person. And you could see how close it was to something really crazy happening. And that's why when he came home that night and told his wife how upset he was, and he really was just ashen, apparently. And he said, you know, now I really get all that stuff you talk about, because it's my husband.
Yeah. Yeah.
He said, I guess, yeah, that dopamine stuff, I guess that's true. Mm-hmm. So the thing is, my point is that we can all this can happen to all of us. And you look in Washington, you watch the news, you see anytime, or in a grocery store, somebody's shouting at a child. And it doesn't matter if the behavior is inappropriate, dopamine is running the show. Yeah. You go to a meeting and somebody stands up and says things that are wrong. So now you just know that, which is a point of compassion. Right. And you can relax more because you can just say, I know what's going on, yeah, and they don't know. Yeah. So appreciating that, we're talking about how do we manage the dopamine for our benefit? Yes.
I have a question related to that.
Yes.
I would think that dopamine is very active when we get triggered by a program that's been in our subconscious, maybe since our childhood. We get triggered by something, and that triggering causes that dopamine rush, right? And our choice is to go right down that rabbit hole of negativity based in fear, right? Or to stop and think and be aware that you have a choice to go down that rabbit hole or to have another thought. You know, yes. So that's also an example of dopamine, right? When we get triggered.
Absolutely. And this is the work that I do in my private practice, is to release that and put it into a different part of the brain where it's just a memory, but doesn't trigger. Because what happens is that in that 1/100th of a second, what happens physically is that so much dopamine is pumped up into and around in our body that it literally blocks the pathways up to the thinking brain. So that's why it's hard. I mean, we can sit here and say, yeah, I've got that part of my childhood that I know triggers me and I'm not going to go there. That's hard to do.
That's hard to do.
That's really hard to do because that logical part, the part that has the ability to analyze, has the ability to manage behavior and emotions, that has the ability to see the big picture and has empathy also. But all that is blocked at the moment your dopamine rushes you with, oh, I remember what that was like when I was abused. It's very hard to do. So we're going to talk about some different ways of working.
Right. Being able to make a choice in the moment. Because I do the same thing with my clients. It's like, if they're going to continually get triggered by money or by relationships or by their body or whatever it would happen to be, and they are not even aware that they're getting triggered and they're down that rabbit hole, as I call it. So it's the ability to be present in the moment, to say, wait, stop. I'm not going there. I'm going to go in another direction, even though, it may be just turning it around in almost a unrealistic way, but it shifts the vibration.
Well, it also, because the brain is like has muscles, and whatever you practice, like what you just said, practicing that thought over and over. So the linkage is, I think about that thing and then I breathe. Because let me just say that we've had finding the red flags is really a help, and the red flags are going to be in our cells will be short, shallow breaths. Tension, any kind of tension,
like this, yeah.
Yeah, and then we get tension in our jaw, well, all over our body, and that's one of those are red signs: shallow, fast breathing, and tension. We want to look for it in ourselves, and we can see it in others. Now, when we see it in others, we do that deep, slow breathing, and I don't know if we have time. I have a fabulous story from Duke University where we had this copper room where we were just totally aware that whatever we're thinking or feeling was in this small room, and we had devices picking up the signals of our energy.
We have time. Let's do it.
Okay. All right. So Elmer Green, who was just a pioneer at the med school there, doing things that they considered pretty out there. We had an 8x8 room that was lined with coppers because it's so conductive. So it was walls, ceiling, floor. We had these sophisticated instruments attached to the walls. We'd have the subject in the room, and we'd have them viewing a video, which was time sequenced, so we could know where it was on the readouts from the tapes that these instruments were recording. And we could see they would have they would have a sequence of fear, anger, sadness, and happiness. And we could read outside the room. It was picking up on these devices. We could see what the signature was for happiness, the frequency of the signal and the amplitude of it. It had a signature totally distinguished from sadness or anger or fear. And so we're radiating this out all the time. So when we start to do these breathing techniques, and we start to oxygenate our brain, because there are gauges here on our carotid arteries that are measuring if our brain's getting enough oxygen. And if we can do that, if we just remember, without trying to figure out anything else that's going on, just deep breath, oxygenate the brain. Because when we're tense, when we're in any of these other conditions of sadness, fear, anger, even happiness, we are not breathing deeply, and our brain is getting a signal, I'm in trouble, because I'm not getting enough oxygen to the part of the thinking brain. It's stuck over here at the emotional part. It gets all the resources, and our ability to say and do and be the best we can for everybody is lost. Mm-hmm. So that's the big message here about oxygenating the brain, which is why when you meditate, when you want to calm down, you want dopamine to be at a very balanced level. And instead of just thinking of breathing, think of oxygenating. Because now what you're doing is very kind of visual, I think, at least for me. It's like you are changing up the recipe for whatever you're going to be thinking about, if you combine it with oxygen, the brain says, oh, that's a different thought. So do you want to try that for a minute and see what that's like?
I would love to. Do you hear the train in the background here?
No, but I can believe it. I can't hear it.
I was going to put myself on mute, but we're good. Okay.
No, don't worry.
Yes,
So
I'd love to. Yeah,
let me just show you. This is just one of the modalities I use working with my clients. And I have stopped calling them patients because they are clients, because I'm just teaching them how to use their own machinery. I am a brain coach. And so what we do, and this is just one technique, but what you can do right now is I'm going to have you in just a minute put one hand here and one hand here where the curvature of your skull is to your neck. But don't do it just
touching your.
You're going to do it just right here where your eyebrows are, okay? And then right just where you can feel the curve, you can cup that occipital lobe back there. Yeah, that looks good. Okay. But you can put your arms down for just a minute. Put your arms down. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to just close your eyes and think about something that is upsetting. It can be whatever comes to mind is fine. It can be from the past. It can be something absolutely current that just happened before we went on to do this program together. And I'm not going to take too much time with this. I would normally, there'd be a lot more time and this would be a much lengthier procedure, but go ahead and feel it in your body. Feel where the tension is. It's important to identify where that tension is. As you're breathing, let it be as vivid as it can be. And then give it a number from 0 being not really, in fact, just you probably want to choose something else, up to 10 where it's just really hard, really painful, sad, or hurtful, whatever it is. And again, I'm not giving you much time to do this because I just want you to have this little skill. And now put your hand up, one hand up on your forehead. It doesn't matter which it is, one behind your head. Okay, and now I want you to deeply breathe. You're going to oxygenate your brain. So you'll feel your chest and your abdomen rising. You'll be pushing it way out as much as you want to be free of whatever it is you're thinking. And let it be vivid while you're doing that. Breathing in deeply, thinking about the disappointment, maybe the person who is involved, the face, hear the voice. Feel the fear that you have, maybe about something that's going on in your life. And let it be as difficult, as uncomfortable, as frightening, as angry, as possibly be while you're now mixing in a whole new recipe for that experience to send to your brain. Oxygenating it while you make it just as hard, just as often as just as much as you want to be free of it. Breathe in deeply. Breathe in deep. And now I'm going to let you just keep your eyes closed and drop your arms along your side. Just breathe. And in this procedure, which would normally take much longer, but it might be interesting to see what you just did was you release the tension in the muscles in the cranial vault. I don't know if you have muscles in the cranial vault inside the skull.
I felt a difference. You know, when I was doing it and thinking of the negative thing, it was probably a 9 for me. Yeah. But just now, after that breath work and oxygenating the brain, I felt there was a drop like to a 5.
Well, and that's wonderful, because any shift tells you the power, the potential of this. And what's great, and the way it's so important for me to work with individuals is it's not long-term, because I've discovered that if I can give you the skills and the insights about it, you can do it. We practice it so they're becoming part of who you are easily and more naturally. But the fact that you can do something like that is so powerful. That's the excitement about this, is that you don't need a prescription. You don't need a trainer for the rest of your life. You don't need a long-term therapy. Because this is your capacity. This is natural. I know this because we've had the technologies to do it, to understand it, but now you can do it.
I agree with you. And when I work with my clients and I give them tools to be able to catch themselves before they go down that rabbit hole, change the thought and shift the frequency. No, it's not hard to do that. You can do that. But this is what I have found.
Right.
Hardest part of doing this work, and I would say your work would be too, is remembering to do it. Remembering to do it. So that, you can, I've worked with clients over and over again, and they still get hooked by the same old things. And it just, I think it really, what needs to happen here is habituation. We need to really bring the habit right to the fore, so that when we are anxious and when we have that rush of dopamine to the negative, that we can change it in the moment.
Well, there's two interesting, what you're talking about is so important. Number one, you're talking about working out that brain. And so it's a new pathway. It's a different pathway. It just links differently. However, what I've discovered with this work is that when you oxygenate that and you do that, it doesn't take that long. It doesn't go back. It really doesn't go back. It's like there's a one-way ticket. Just as the brain first of all, when it had whatever happened that was upsetting happened, the brain had this mix of I call it a recipe, but it's a certain wiring diagram to do something. Now, when you go in and you oxygenate it, which is like, you never see a gazelle yawning as a lion's following, running after them to catch them. So when you bring oxygen, which is what yawning is, when you bring oxygen to your brain, it just simply changes that. And you brought up that old memory, and now you combine it with oxygen. It doesn't have that memory. It just simply doesn't. It's like the old one goes into a file cabinet, and it's just so it's recorded in case it would ever help. But the charge has gone off of it. Now it's or like an album, a photo album, you can remember it. But the brain now has new wiring, current wiring, that will change the trigger, will trigger a memory of it in a different way. And the memory of breathing actually goes along with it. That after a while you begin, the brain begins to associate your thinking with oxygenation. And it's kind of like driving the car, where now we don't have to think about gas, foot on the gas pedal, brake, drive. And the brain begins to link more oxygen with upsetting memories or situations, new or old, which is really hopeful.
Well, that's wonderful information. And I'm going to definitely bring that into my practice and help my clients by, when they catch themselves being triggered, to immediately oxygenate the brain. Because
exactly.
And even though, if you can get into the habit of catching the trigger and making another choice in the moment, you shift the vibrational frequency. And every single time you do that, you have the wherewithal to do that, you're kind of building a new neural pathway, aren't you?
Oh, you absolutely are, because neural pathways are just built by the recipe of the information that comes into the brain. It decides where to put it.
Right.
Put it in the part that triggers you, or put in the part of just memory.
And when a little bit ago, you were talking about this, and talking about something that triggered a memory of a quote that I think is so powerful. Memory without the emotional charge is called wisdom.
Oh, I love it. And boy, isn't that the truth? That is fabulous. Do you know who's?
Yes, Joe Dispenza.
Oh, great.
Yeah, Joe Dispenza. Yeah. Memory without the charge is called wisdom. And it is, because I can remember a traumatic event in my childhood, a molestation, and I can remember it. I have the memory of it as far as I have the memory of it, but I don't get triggered anymore by it. I can really talk about it. And, it's a story. We all have our stories and our human experience. But I think that's so true. Memory without the emotional charge, when we can really, our emotions are so important. Well, they're a huge component of manifestation, right? You have the thought, and then you have the feeling. The electricity of the thought and the magnetism of the emotions moves right into the field and observes those subatomic particles to come into form. I mean, we're manifestors.
Oh, and now we know that, it's not wishful thinking. It's not like, oh, that's a nice idea. We know this is science.
Yes.
We know that spirituality is going to be pretty soon. I think there'll be less and less a differentiation between spirituality and science. I mean, we're going to need another name for just maybe wisdom or whatever it is, because we've got so much evidence about how we can direct our minds towards healing and towards manifestation in different ways, and we know that makes perfect sense, because everything we do or say or are, like you said before, has no space. It's all space, has no real distance. I mean, I don't know, you probably, everybody knows examples of some of these things, but I think of the one, just thinking now, the one up at University of San Francisco, at school, where they have people, cardiovascular patients, having certain same procedure done, divided them into 3 groups, and it was double blind, so neither the surgeons nor the staff nor the patients had any idea what was going on. And they took the people who were willing to think about these people who were having the surgery, and they divided them into one group. Control group just didn't do anything, and they probably said, gee, good luck or something like that. The next group was given really good information so they could visualize the procedure, the recovery time, working for the heart, really educated about what's going on. And the third group were just asked to send their best wishes. It might have been for some Om, it might have been praise Jesus, it could have been anything. There was no format for what they're supposed to do, but just focus on these individuals with as much love and passion.
Focus on them in a positive way, the third group.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever that meant to the individuals. So there wasn't any protocol for that at all. And they ran it 3 times, and always the winners were, which one?
Number 3.
Yeah, absolutely. That's all we need to do. And imagine, they got better. The ones that were lucky enough to have the group 3 thinking about them got better twice as fast and had half as many complications.
Yeah. They've done, do you ever hear of William Tiller up in Stanford? Yeah. And he's known for his healing experiments where he would hear people in the United States and people in Russia in a lead room, and they would be sending healing to these people who had different ailments, and the healing affected them in a positive way, and they were affected positively by the positive energy sent to them thousands of miles away.
Yeah, isn't that wonderful? I mean, the opportunities we have to serve and the responsibilities that we have about what we think and say are really remarkable. And dopamine, sometimes we get a challenge because we're rewarded for worrying, because the brain again says, oh, okay, if I worry, I'm going to be safe. But we get dopamine for that. Yeah. And so, when we go into like healing, or we go into anything that's got worry associated with it, we let go of that worry, then we access this larger, ability, which goes into our spirituality, which allows us to know that this is what we're meant to be. We've been we until now, we've been so focused on the solid, on the classical physics, the ones you can see in a microscope.
Right.
And now we're subatomic particles, we're stardust.
And I really feel that if people can truly come into understanding that they are energy beings in physical form, if we can really understand that we're barely scratching the scratch of our potentiality and how we can be in this human experience, and we're unlimited in our potential. As based on all the work that I've done, I've come to this conclusion that we're divine, that my work aligned with the divine, that we're divine, that we're God in form, if you will. And everybody is. There's nobody that's not, even the bad guys. So it's important for us to really have that kind of shift in our thinking that, hey, we're spirit in the body and we're unlimited in our potential. And what capacity, what role does our brain play, beyond what, let's say, science has discovered up until now, and it's moving out now into unlimited potential. Just like with our heart, they've done all kinds of experiments with heart math and
Yes.
the brain and the heart. The breath that we did before today was, I understand that it's a heart-brain coherence, bringing the brain and the heart into coherence, breathing into the count of 5, exhaling to the count of 8. The breath has always been important, going all the way back to the original yogis and the Essenes and all of that. But I think today people are becoming more and more aware of how fear is associated with not breathing, and how happiness and joy is associated with expanded breathing. It's not that we have to even intentionally breathe, we just breathe. And when all of that is happening, whether it's negative or positive, what I'm hearing you say around the dopamine is that dopamine is being released, whether it's worry, fear, whatever, or whether it's happiness, joy.
Some great experiments just recently showed that deep meditation evokes dopamine. Now, the challenge here is for the dopamine, the way we've been used to feeling and experiencing it, and not managing it, and it just being run by it, keeps us, that monkey mind going, keeps us very focused externally. But now if we know that we go quiet and we start to develop this reward system for that quiet, that now, dopamine can help us expand instead of contracting into eating the wrong foods or being involved with counterproductive activities. We can use it. And it's like, I always laugh. I think, when you were in love with someone, nobody had to say to you, okay, be sure to think about him or her. You just did. Now think about it. You've got dopamine, you've got this expansion, you know that what you're thinking and doing is really important. And you have this sense of wonder, what else is possible? What else, can we experience? What else can we create? What else can we heal? What else can we enjoy? And you stay in that wonder, and that's where the dopamine evolves.
Yeah.
That's where that comes.
So it's it's like a coin. One side is, in a way, negative or challenging, and the other side is positive. So we can actually, dopamine is here to stay. Dopamine is what we have.
We don't want to be without it. Are you kidding?
Couldn't be without it. So for us to understand how dopamine can work against us or for us is very, very important, because it gives a person a logical, linear, practical understanding of a necessary component of their chemistry and their makeup that they can actually control through intention and through remembering to breathe or to remember. What I would like to be able to do, because I've been into some pretty deep meditations, I would like to be able to live my life, because I've had a pretty active monkey mind. I'd like to be able to live my life as every day as it's a meditation. Whatever I'm doing, whether I'm brushing my teeth or cooking or taking a walk or doing my work. And I think that if we can move into that kind of presence, because it's about presence and being, if we can move into that kind of presence and being, then we can catch our triggers. And then it's easier for us then to say, okay, what I need to do now is breathe and change my mind.
Oxygenate, not breathe, oxygenate.
Oxygenate. So what's the difference between breathing and oxygenating? Is it a connected breath?
No, oxygenation is just the process of putting oxygen into your brain, which is the fuel that will allow you to think and make good choices. It's part of breathing. But I like the term better, because it's like a really big, it gives you the sense of the process, of the enormity of it. It's not just breathing. Breathing is the kind of the mechanical part, but the oxygenation is where the transformation takes place. But I want to go back to one thing you were saying. This is so lovely about what you were saying about everything being a meditation, because what you'll notice, in those few moments where one does experience that, is that when something else comes in that's not consistent with it, that it becomes so obvious. You know, it's like if you're sitting quiet and somebody goes pounds on the door, you jump. Well, can you see? And I'm only speculating because I'm not there yet myself, but I think what you're talking about is just the way we want to be as human beings. And that more and more as we begin to recognize what dopamine is about, is that it just feels inconsistent. It's not in alignment. It's not, it's not the problem. It's not that we're bad. We're just developing new skills. And that as you're doing by the time you're meditating, brushing your teeth and cooking, one of those old thoughts comes back that starts a slow, shallow breathing. It's like, huh? Oh, not doing that. Not
You
going
catch it right away. It's amazing. I heard Eckhart Tolle say, oh my God, 25 years ago, that people are present 30 seconds out of the day. And I went, what? 30 seconds out of the day? Of course, 20 years ago, I was the kind of meditator. I was looking at my watch every minute and thinking all the list of things I had to do. And why was I sitting here wasting time? That's changed, thank God. But when I heard 30 seconds out of the day, I made a decision at that point in time in my life. No, that is not going to be me. I'm going to choose to be present much more than 30 seconds out of the day. And now with the work that I've been doing, and about this, the word work, I am the word.
Yes.
I've really moved to this place of knowing that I'm divine, but that we're all divine. I'm not more divine than anybody else. We're all divine beings. And when I remember that, I can be present in the moment, and I can just be that. And one of the big messages from the book, and the 11th book, that Book of Innocence coming out now, that just came out now, is presence and being. Be present in the moment to who you are. Divine being having human experience. Be present and be. Presence and being. And I think that is a wonderful rule of thumb in a way. And what fascinates me about the work that you're doing is that you have actual tools to deal with the red flags. You have tools, and this oxygenation is a wonderful example of that. And you can make such a difference in people's lives when they.
It's so exciting. I feel so fortunate. I just can't even. So I sometimes have to, just pinch myself, because how can I be so fortunate to do this work? Because first of all, being able to share with clients the basic workings of their brain, which we've never known before, and we certainly weren't taught. And then to be able to release the old traumas that take up so much time and energy and space in our brain and influence color where we go forward. So being able to release that trauma is so liberating for whatever else you want to do with your brain. And then you can really start to explore and be able to move beyond what has been kind of weighting us down, and what's part of the old humanness, of what you work so much with feelings and that kind of thing. So if we can have that cleared up in our brain is free for new experiences and seeing life in new ways. Well, then that's when I'm writing a series of books for children. And it's a 5-part series about how to use their brain. And it's called The Brainy Books of Wow, with Dr. Wow and Buddy the Wonder Cat. Imagine where those came from. Anyway, and the kids go through the brain and they learn about how to use the brain and what the parts are and that kind of thing. But we had been originally writing the books. I have a wonderful collaborator, Isabel Oakley, and when we thought there are 3 parts of the brain, which is the way we're all trained. You've got the reptilian, the mammalian, the human. And when we got there, it was the part that was wow, was now where do we go from here? And we bring those children out from, they're standing on a cranium, on a skull, and they're looking at the stars, they're looking at the nebula, they're looking out into infinite, unlimited possibilities. Yeah. And this is where we want to take our brains. We want to help our children to move beyond these limitations. Understand how to operate this. And when you do, then you can expand out without the distraction. So the dopamine about how that feels good is great to use it in that way, and then to get to that part where that limitless part of ourselves, that presence that you're talking about, is that is where all things are possible.
That's where the juice is. That's where the juice.
Isn't that the truth? Yes,
I love that you're doing children's books around this. It's so very important.
Oh my gosh.
You know, my thought is, if children in kindergarten, or I look at these young people today, you know, that are having babies, and I think, oh, they're a conscious couple having a baby. They know they're divine beings as parents, and they're raising this child, and they're genetic engineers, really, because how they be with the child, even in utero, is really important, right?
Yeah.
They have, you know, they have the opportunity to raise this child, knowing that this child is an energy being in physical form, an unlimited being, having this container of the body and wearing this mask of who they think they are and all, but having the awareness of that through their entire lives would give them such an edge on creating happy lives and moving in a direction that lights them up and gets the dopamine pumping in a positive way. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
So exciting.
Yeah. You know, being able to manage this vehicle well then allows us to move beyond it. Yes. And so dopamine has such an incredible influence that just acknowledging that, knowing that, when you see something inappropriate, you know that's what's going on. You don't have to you don't have to be so engaged. You don't have to take it on. And then more and more you're in the present. It leaves that space. It's like, oh, that's taken care of. Just like driving a car and not having to worry about it.
You know, I want to relate it to what's going on today in the world, with Israel and Palestine. There's so much, and even amongst my colleagues, there's this we, they, taking sides type of thing. And I just cannot go there. I know that everyone is a spiritual being having the human experience that they're having, you know, in Israel, and people are dying and tragedies are happening and terror is happening and it's awful. But when we get into it and we start getting into the conversation about it and taking sides and all, what we're doing is we're not only enhancing dopamine in a negative way in us, but we're contributing to the negative vibration of what's going on. So I feel that the answer to this and all these tragedies that are happening in the world, you know, the sex trafficking and the children trafficking and all of these before now, that we need to really look at it from the highest vibrational frequency we can, see it through the eyes of love, see it through the eyes of lifting up the perpetrators and lifting up even the victims, because that's really the only way we're going to make any permanent change, is by people. And if everyone on the planet knew that they were energy beings in physical form, if they all knew they were God in form, if all of us knew that, and we could focus our energy on healing the planet, we would heal the planet. We would heal war. War is an obsolete concept. No, and I think that we're going to be seeing probably a lot more of these things happening before we really move through the paradigm shift that humanity is in right now. I feel that COVID and the war in Ukraine, and now we're having another war to contend with globally, that humanity is like a butterfly. I love to use this metaphor. This is from Bruce Lipton. He says that when COVID happened, he was like excited. He was like excited because he said, this is what we've been waiting for. And what COVID did is really brought globally a level playing field. And it brought people to their own place of personal awareness. Do I want to go back to that 9-to-5 kiss-ass job? Or do I want to paint? Do I want to sculpt? Do I want to travel? What is it that I want to do? And all of a sudden, there's this unlimited potential that's beginning to happen. So there's all the negative stuff that's happening now, but all the positive stuff that's happening now too. So we're in the chrysalis, humanity's in the chrysalis, and we're in breakdown. We're in breakdown. We're in breakdown. We're breaking down into that mushy elixir that will eventually result in what? The monarch butterfly. So for me, my work, I feel my most important work is to help people to remember who they are, to really own their nature as divine. And I love the work that you're doing to contribute to it, because you're really helping people understand that there are ways tools that they can use to shift their demeanor, to shift their circumstances, to shift their environment just by changing their mind.
Change their health. Change their health is huge.
Yeah,
absolutely. When we look at what's going on with the conflicts, it's a huge challenge, even for just individuals, not to buy into the fix of dopamine that comes from talking about the awfulness of things.
Right. I don't
get that because the brain says, oh, she's worried about this. I'm going to give her some a fix for that. So even those small choices that we can make about how we talk to each other about these things, and then raise it to the level that you're talking about, but it's a little bit of a challenge, because you've got the spin on people's excitement about, oh, isn't this horrible, and look what's happening, and it becomes collective, and that's where the conversation is, and it takes an awareness of what you're talking about, of making that choice to be able to break that cycle and not be part of it, because it feels good until it doesn't.
Today I was looking at my WhatsApp. I follow a couple of groups there, and there's a group that I'm involved in, and we're all professional speakers, and we're all pretty much in the same conversation. This one gal is an Israeli, and here was the message she left: I died on October 7th. That's what she said. I died on October 7th, which is, of course, when the war broke out. I believe that's when, the bombings were happening and civilians were being killed right and left. And I want to reach out to her, but I don't want to, as an Israeli, I don't want to offend her in any way, because I certainly, it's tragic what's going on, but that mindset contributes to the negativity. It contributes to the war. It contributes to it continuing, So
it keeps fuel on the fire, and because we keep getting that reward over and over again, every time we see a terrible scene of something, somebody reports a story or says, I died on October 7th. That's a profound hit.
That's a profound hit on the body. Yeah.
And you're going to get dopamine for it. And if you're not careful, you're going to be rewarded and coming back for more. Like friends who spend so much time now watching their televisions to see what's happening over there.
I have lost friends because I won't go into the conversations with them, and they think I'm doing a spiritual bypass. Hardly. I'm not doing a spiritual bypass. What I'm doing is applying what I know spiritually to a situation to change it, because by going down into the gutter with all of that stuff that's going on just contributes to it. And Einstein said it in his quote about, a solution never comes from the problem. I don't know what the exact quote is, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And Bob Proctor, a great spiritual coach, said, and I just did a Facebook Live about this, he said, you are always the problem and you are always the solution.
Yeah.
Always the problem and always the solution. So it keeps coming back to us. So I would think, bringing it totally back to you and the wonderful work you're doing, that the brain would have such an important part in this. And, people kind of take the brain for granted. Oh, we have a brain. Okay, we have a brain. And they take the heart for granted. But as we move into our spiritual awareness, then the brain takes on a whole new dimension of possibility, of not, it already is there. But, when we move our consciousness into the idea of unlimited potential, then, the brain is our tremendous ally in helping us get there. Yes?
Yes, and it's moved from this solid, fixed, dense kind of object, which the brain is. If you've ever felt it, it feels dense and solid and all, and to this kind of open quantum field of energy that it's producing and sending out, and is there now to open up new vistas, new possibilities, and it becomes so delicious, like the new boyfriend or girlfriend. That's just where you want to go. It's not because you have to be right.
Yeah. And that's what Bruce Lipton calls the honeymoon effect. That was his latest book, The Honeymoon Effect. When we're in love and we're on the honeymoon, our chemistry in the body is just rocking and rolling. We feel great. We look great. We're not tired. He said, we can actually take that honeymoon effect into our bodies every day with how we be. And I think it ties back to presence and being. Presence. Yeah. When we can be present to our divine self and be there, then our challenges become easier to spot and easier for us to change it. So share a little bit with your audience what you might do if a client came to you with, let's say, a chronic depression. Give us you talked about the oxygenation of the brain. Is there anything else you can share of what you might do?
Well, with depression, that is such a generalized kind of emotion. However, it usually relates back to some specific experiences that have triggered that. Now, sometimes it might be from a genetically low level of dopamine. Now that I can't do much about, because that has to really be, I mean, we can work with diet and activities, and we can definitely boost that. But the other part of it, when you have depression and you go back, we're looking for the memories that told the brain it's not safe to be open, to be joyful, to be fully who you are. And that's what depression is really about. And so when I see that, and it comes out in layers when we're doing this work, this is it can be done with visualization, with this part of it. We have sometimes I use some tapping techniques too, because what we want to do is get into, we want to start loosening up the brain to bring forward the worst of it, so that then we can oxygenate it and the brain will do the rest of the work and transform it. So that's basically what the work is in dealing with whatever the problem is. And I only work with about half of the people who call and would like to to work, because I'm really looking for the right match.
Yeah, I understand that.
That's I want to make sure that what the goals are, and that I feel like we can accomplish those with working with the brain, and that's not always the case. So, we want people to be inspired. We want them to be empowered, and that's my whole goal, is to give people their own sense of who they are, what they can do, and then from there, not be limited as to what they can develop and express that fully allows them to be who they've come to be.
You and I are doing the same work, darling. So we have another question. Just in case people might not know this, because I'm not even quite sure that I understand it, but explain neuroplasticity.
Oh, well, in the simplest terms, neuroplasticity is the fact that, like I mentioned about the brain missing one hemisphere and wiring around it and somehow coming out with this little girl who's totally functional. Neuroplasticity is a matter of repetition of old, what it's really doing is reforming the pathways by sending in new information over and over again, and finally it's a new pathway. This works we've seen some really exciting work about people that have poor vision problems, and then there'll be other parts of the brain that'll pick up what would normally be taken care of by the optic nerves and all the activity that goes in with the brain having to do with vision, or with hearing, loss of hearing in one ear, and then it's some other part of the brain that starts to fill in.
That's interesting.
Neuroplasticity, it's what the brain can do to heal itself, or to heal an emotional condition. So it can be physical or emotional.
So, DC, we're coming here to the end of our wonderful interview, and I'd like you to share with people how they can reach you if they're interested in hearing more about your work or finding out your speaking schedule, or would like to even have a session with you, can you give us your email?
Sure. And I want to say that anybody who's with us today, that we're sharing this together, I would love to offer you a consult for free, and just do an evaluation to share, because it's always a team effort. That's the way we work. I'm the coach. and so that's what we're looking for, is to see what your goals are, and if they match up with what my skills are and my knowledge base, and if I think it's realistic, because it isn't always, and like anything else that you do that's one-on-one, you want to find just this nice match where we really are exponentially effective together.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So my probably the best thing would be my email, well, let me give my website and my email. That would be probably easiest. My email is DCMCGUIRE, DC McGuire, at wiremybrain.com. DC McGuire at wiremybrain.com.
DC McGuire at wiremybrain.com. DC McGuire at wiremybrain.com. I'm repeating this for the people that are driving their cars listening to this.
And then the other thing, just to know a little bit more about my my work, but I just caution you, I'm so busy doing other things. I do speaking, I do consulting for businesses, all kinds of things, that my website is not probably all that it could be, but it still give you an idea. And that is it's www.wiremybrain.com.
Wiremybrain.com. You got that domain pretty good.
Yeah, isn't that nice?
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, this has been delightful, and I feel like we're barely scratching the surface of where we could go with this conversation when we bring in this whole idea of spirit and God and energy and all of that. When people have an understanding of who they are and they know who they are, and it's exciting.
And we add the science to it,
and
because they're all one.
They are one. When I started my show in 1996, it was called The Paradigm Shift. And my motto was science and spirituality are the same conversation. You know, and it's been separated so much by society and by church and state and all of that. But people are realizing now that quantum physics, especially, it's exciting. Quantum physics is exciting what's happening. Einstein, Max Planck, Heisenberg, Schrodinger, all those guys.
Oh yeah, they knew what they were talking about. And you know, it's in a lot of ways, I notice this when I'm talking to corporations, is that it's easier for sometimes people to enter the conversation, move into a different way of thinking, if you have some science to go with it. It's like it gives them permission. Yes. It's like, okay, all right, that's yeah, all right, that makes sense. Yeah, quantum physics will, and we can move out into how we're thinking and how we do things and how we interact with everything, because we are anyway all the time. You know, that is like that really is like an invitation, a kind of a stealthy invitation to be able to just open up to this next reality that we're going to be aware of, and all the limits are off.
Yeah, it's very exciting. That's wonderful. I love what you're doing, and I'm really excited about your books, your children's books.
Thank you.
So, if you had a pearl of wisdom to give our listeners and our viewers, what would you like to close the show with today, dear DC?
I would love to give each person the confidence to believe that who they are and what is already in place is enough to be able to live the life you want to live. And that if you reach out to people like Patricia, who can give you some wisdom and some insight, you know, to just give you some direction, and you can, you know, start to work with your brain, understand that this is who we are, this is our capacity, and that with a few tidbits of information and a few skills, much easier than we would have ever imagined until we had all this scanning technology, is that we can have this quality of life that we want. We could share it with others. we can begin to create a new reality that benefits everyone on this planet.
Thank you very much. With that, I want to thank all of you who have joined us today, all our listeners. Whatever you're doing, walking the dog, driving your car, cooking your dinner, and all of those that are watching us on YouTube, thank you so much. We really appreciate you as an audience. And remember how important your brain is. Rewire your brain. You can do it. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks for joining me today on Align with the Divine podcast. I hope you enjoyed the show. And if you'd like to learn more about my work, I invite you to my website, alignwiththedivine.net. And on the homepage, I'm giving away a free gift. It's a masterclass I did called The 7 Keys to Successful Manifesting. Pretty much lays out the bones of my work. Also, for a limited time only, between now and the end of August, just for the summer, I'll be giving complimentary tarot sessions, 30-minute sessions valued at $90. So if you're interested, reach out to me using my email, patricia@patriciadiorio.com, and I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks again for joining me today, and namaste.